back to our regularly scheduled program. All right, good afternoon. Good evening, or whatever it is. Mercury's in retrograde, so I don't know. All bets are off. I'm Frank Rimalovski. I'm the executive director here at the Entrepreneurial Institute. We're the team that runs the Leslie E Lab and the programs that we're going to be talking about. We also run the Innovation Venture Fund, the Female Founders Forum this Friday, the Entrepreneurs Festival, a whole rash of other stuff to help students and faculty start. That's what we do. That's what we do every day. Is anyone here at the Leslie E Lab for the first time? Any rookies? Okay. No? Okay, that's good. Before I dive in, I'd love to get a sense of who's here. So let's start with who's an undergrad? Okay, who's a grad student? Who's faculty? Postdoc? Anyone to leave out? Any staff? Anyone who doesn't go to NYU who just came here for the pizza and beer? There's no pizza and beer, not today. Sorry. All right, what schools do we represented? Arts and Science, Steinhardt, Gallatin, yay, Liberal Studies, Stern, Tandon, Medicine, who am I leaving out? SPS, Public Health, Courant, Wagner, Law, awesome. Excellent. Get in jail, go call him. All right, great. I'm thrilled that we have such a diverse array of folks here because that's what NYU is all about and that's what startups and entrepreneurship are all about. So I want to everyone here talk about these two things, right? No surprises here? Okay, good. So we run 2 summer accelerators, a short one and a long one. But their differences are not just the length. But both of them provide the funding, training, mentorship, and connections that you're going to need to help get your startup started. Okay? In a nutshell, I'm going to kind of do a quick overview of each program just to frame them, and then we'll do a deeper dive on each one. Does that sound like a plan? Okay, you can interrupt me at any point in time if you have a question. You can shout it out, raise your hand, whatever works for you. If I'm not making sense or I start using any jargon, feel free to stop me. Okay, so the Startup Sprint is the shorter program of the 2. This runs 2 full weeks, essentially from the Tuesday after Memorial Day. By the way, if you checked in on the little app that Jen had, we're going to send you these slides. Okay? But you're welcome to take pictures. You can live tweet, whatever you want. Live tweeting was a joke. I don't know. Does anyone do that anymore? So the Sprint is a 2 full week program, and we'll get into the details of what that means. From Tuesday to the following Friday, so 9 days in total. The focus is on teaching you the best practices around customer discovery and business model generation. And I'll explain more about what each of those means. With the goal of getting you to problem solution fit, okay? Meaning that you have a strong understanding of who your initial target customer is, the problems that they have, and how your potential solution can solve them. It doesn't mean you have to have built it or shipped it. You don't even have to have a prototype. That's what we call customer discovery. It's getting out, talking to your customers, testing your hypotheses and ideas, figuring out where you're right, figuring out where you're wrong, and pivoting or adapting. Okay, that's kind of in a nutshell. You're going to do really a lot of that in a very, very intensive 2 weeks. You'll work really closely with our team, and I'll introduce them in a bit, as well as our founders in residence, which are folks that sat in these seats just over the last couple of years, some of whom are about to graduate, some who graduated a year or 2 ago, who help us out here by coaching other teams. And our entrepreneur in residence are more seasoned entrepreneurs who help us out as well. Everybody who participates in that gets 5K in cloud computing credits, cloud hosting credits from Amazon Web Services, a $1,000 grant, and the ability to apply for an additional $1,500 after the program. The Summer Launchpad is for slightly more advanced teams okay? It runs a full 9 weeks during the summer. You can see it starts right after this program ends, so it also starts on a Tuesday. And I'll share the schedule later, but this is really to help teams that have already achieved problem solution fit and now begin to scale their business. Okay, so figuring out not just what is the product and how to deliver it, right, but how are you going to acquire customers? How are you going to sell? How are you going to price your product? What partnerships do you need? Unit economic costs and all that kind of stuff, okay? With the goal of getting to product market fit by the end of the summer, where it means that you now actually have either a working prototype or finished product in customers' hands, commitments to purchase, pilots, and the like. Okay, if you just are at the idea stage right now, that might not be achievable, but we can talk about that. Okay, you'll work intensively with all these folks here, and each team will be paired with typically around 2 or 3 entrepreneurs who volunteer as mentors here, so folks from the startup community, some of whom are alumni, some aren't. And each team is also paired up with a mock board of directors with real living, breathing venture capitalists, who you'll meet with 3 times over the course of the summer. Each team participating in this gets a 10K plant credits. If you do the sprint first, you get an incremental 5. You'll get to work with one of our legal partners who will help with incorporation and other legal matters. A good chunk of that will be free banking with First Republic Bank, etc., and then a $10,000 grant. Okay? One of the reasons why, so that's kind of in a nutshell, the 2 programs. We've worked with teams, I don't know what the significance of this build is. Oh, I see. Let me go back. I'm understanding it now. Okay, so we work with teams from Tandon and Stern, from CAS, GSAS, Steinhardt, Tisch, Medicine, Wagner, Silver, Dentistry, Karat, Liberal Studies, SPS, Abu Dhabi, Shanghai, Law, Gallatin, from just schools across the entire university. So we love to see that here. And that's important because no one school or discipline has a monopoly on insights or ideas that can serve as the basis for an entrepreneur. You may need an engineer at some point to help you build it, or you may need someone with deep business skills to help you scale it at some point, but founders can come really from any walk of life, any discipline, and that's one of the great things about doing this at NYU. So why should you participate in Summer Launchpad? Really simply put, to help you decrease your risk of failure, right? Because the sad truth is 75% of startups fail. Like 75% of startups that raise venture capital actually go on to fail. Okay, so these are teams that actually brought a product to market, raised money, built out a team, and they still fail. Okay, so starting a venture is a high-risk proposition, but why is it so hard? This is something we spend a lot of time thinking about and talking about here at the Institute. And I don't know if you've seen this chart before, but this is the results of some research that CB Insights, a market research firm that follows the startup and venture ecosystem, did. And I'm not going to go through all these. They actually did what they call a post-mortem of over 200 venture-backed startups at this point. So these are other startups, different universe, but that raised venture capital and still went on to fail, and then surveyed and studied the founders of those ventures and why they failed. And I'm not going to go through all these, but I do want to touch on the top 2. The first one, or the second one, rather, is that they ran out of cash. And I would argue that that's a misattribution of cause. That's actually more the symptom than the cause, right? Because here in New York City, and in the startup ecosystem in New York City, and in Silicon Valley and Boston for that matter, there's no shortage of cash. I don't just mean amongst all the people, I mean amongst those who actively invest in startups. A lot of people, myself included, would argue that there's actually more money chasing a few good deals. That's actually why you see valuations going up. So when a startup fails and the founder says, well, we failed because we ran out of cash, I would want to ask that founder, well, why weren't you able to raise more money? Or I'd want to ask the investors that they pitched, why didn't you invest? And the answer, more often than not, is going to be this first one, right? Or some variation of that, which 42% of founders said they failed because there was a lack of market need. Meaning that they built something that there wasn't enough demand for, the market didn't want, or they weren't willing to use enough, or weren't willing to pay enough, or wasn't differentiated enough from the existing solutions in the market. Okay? And I'm an investor. We actually run a venture fund here, and I'm looking at, particularly at the early stages, for evidence that there is demand for this. I don't like to guess at that, and investors don't like to guess at that. If your last name is Zuckerberg or Musk, right, someone will write you a check to figure out if there's a market for your opportunity. But for the rest of us mortals, we're really looking for evidence. Mm-hmm. Right, so that is something that I believe is not only preventable, but actually not all that hard to figure out, to not just hope and pray that there is a market need, but to actually know it before you spend too much time and effort and resources and money trying to launch that startup. Am I making sense? Okay, good. Right, so our approach to starting a startup, right, is about getting substantial customer feedback before you get too far out over your skis. Right, so with the goal being, as I just said, so you're launching products that you actually know customers want, right? We call this actually evidence-based entrepreneurship. And I like to call it that because then I can contrast it with faith-based entrepreneurship, where we hope and pray that you are making the right decisions. Okay, but we believe in evidence. Just like for those of you who are scientists and engineers, I hope you believe in evidence as well. I don't mean to get too philosophical here, but right, so I'll talk more about the rest of this. And the way that we'll do that is by teaching you, and not through a series of long lectures, but short lectures, and then teaching you how to actually go out and apply it immediately on the very first day, in fact, of the Sprint or Startup or Summer Launchpad. You will put what you're learning to work. Actually, the first day of Summer Launchpad, we go out drinking in the afternoon, so maybe on the second day. Right, and so this is a process called customer development that was developed by a guy named Steve Blank. Who here's heard of Steve Blank? Okay, some of you. Steve lives out in the Bay Area. He is an 8-time serial entrepreneur with a bunch of great successes and a bunch of big failures. And when he retired about 10, 15 years ago, he was teaching at Stanford and Berkeley and started reflecting on what was the difference between the successes and the failures. And he had a bit of an epiphany when he realized that the way that we've been teaching and advising founders was that startups were essentially a smaller version of a larger company or of an established company. And the truth is that startups are fundamentally different, right? Because an established company, large or small, knows who its customers are, know what they value, know how much they're willing to pay, know how to acquire them, and so on. As a startup, you really don't know the answers to those questions. You may have a set of hypotheses, but they're really guesses, maybe educated guesses, maybe well-informed educated guesses, right? So startups are in search mode. They're searching for the answers to those questions. And so customer development is a rigorous evidence-based methodology to help you get those facts, those answers, so that you can shift into execution mode, right? And this is the trap that a lot of entrepreneurs fall into. They have an idea and they just want to start building it. And I'll tell you, I've been working with startups and entrepreneurs and founders and investing in them for 25 years. That is the guaranteed most expensive way to learn. To actually build something and then find out that the market doesn't want it, or they wanted it this way, not this way, right? Or that you got the pricing wrong, or that you focused on the wrong initial target customer. Okay, those can be very expensive and debilitating lessons. Okay, you may exhaust your own patience, your own resources, the money that you raise, the support of your co-founders or partners or friends or spouses or parents or whoever. Okay, so what we are really trying to teach you here is an approach that actually saves you time and effort. So you can focus on executing on facts, not dreams. Okay, there are some seats up here. There's a bunch of seats over here. Feel free to join. Come on up. Hello. Right, so rather than jumping right in execution mode, we start with a disciplined approach to search. In discipline, I don't want you to think it's not about doing surveys, it's not about statistical data, gathering statistically relevant data. But it is about getting out of the building and talking to those people that you believe are your initial target customers, so that you can test those assumptions or hypotheses, as I've been calling them, about who your customers are and what are the needs or problems that they have, and use that to inform what is the actual product and business model that you will use to exploit those insights. And it doesn't mean that if you already have built something that you have to start from square one, but there may be elements of your business model that you can apply that to that you really are at square one, right? We meet lots of teams in here every day that have a product, but they don't know who's going to be their initial target customer. Or they have a product, but they don't know how they're going to make money from it. And if you don't really know how you're going to make money, you probably don't have a business, even if you're a nonprofit. Okay? Or they don't know how they're going to sell it, or they don't know how they're going to market it. And you can use this technique to help you figure this out really quickly, really cheaply, and use that to inform further development of prototypes and experiments that you can run to help you de-risk your business model, right? And then we shift into customer validation, right? Where we start to put things in front of or in the hands of our customers to get further truth, further facts, further evidence to support, and then we begin to shift into execution mode, right? And as I'll tell you more about in a minute, the sprint is really focused more on what it says here, customer discovery, step 1, and a little bit of step 2. Summer Launchpad is really more about a lot of step 2 and a lot of step 3. Okay, and we'll talk more about each of those. Right, so let's talk about the sprint in a little bit more detail. So in terms of who the sprint is for, remember the sprint is the 2-week program, right? It's for current NYU students. We include that definition of those who just graduated last fall, okay? Or later. You could be, a first-year grad student, or junior, sophomore, whatever, who, as well as staff and researchers, but it ends up being mostly students, but that's okay. We've actually had a lot of success mixing them, who are somewhere beyond the idea stage, okay? And we can talk more about what that means, right? In terms of where those teams that have gone through this program in the past, we've had 87 teams across, I think we're up to 8 sprints now, no, 7 sprints. They've come from all 20 NYU schools. I'm not gonna read all this. You can see some of them are social impact. They're already as a group generating, and we've only been doing this for just over 2 years. They're already generating over $5 million in revenue. We have an incredible track record of teams making it to the finals and winning the 300K Entrepreneurs Challenge. Actually, all of the intervention winners of the last 2 years have gone through a sprint. And that's not by design, that's a happy coincidence. There's some seats up here if you guys want to sit down. And you can read the rest of this. So lots of goodness has been coming out of this. We have incredibly diverse teams, as you can see here on the upper right, by every measure. We're really proud of that. They've also actually, in addition to revenue, they've raised a lot of money in grants, okay, through other competitions or other non-dilutive funding. And a lot of them have gone on to participate in Summer Launchpad or the Stern Venture Fellows program. 9 of them have raised external angel or venture funding. We've already had 1 team acquired, and 3 of them are working on the Future Labs incubators in Brooklyn. Really a good group, and they love this program. 9, on average, on a scale of 1 to 10, it is given a 9.5 net promoter score, which essentially asks the very simple question, would you recommend this program to a friend or colleague? Okay, we're really proud of that. Okay, what it's about, this is not a class. Okay, it's not for credit. It's to help you build a scalable startup which addresses a meaningful problem for your customers. A meaningful problem is not in the highfalutin, addressing a societal issue. We've had consumer products and all kinds of tech startups in here, as well as social impact. Okay, but we want to know that it's a meaningful problem for your customer, not something that is trivial or insignificant to them. Okay? And at this point, we expect that you may just have a strong, hopefully well-informed hypothesis, and over the spring you'll learn how to turn that into fact, right? So you will learn how to understand your customers. This is a team literally getting out of the building into Washington Square Park. They were developing a service to help therapy seekers find a therapist with a strong match for them. So how did they do that, right? Rather than just walking up to random people, they held up these signs in Washington Square Park and got a lot of news. We've had teams set up lemonade stands or hot chocolate stands on cold days. And you will do it not just on the street, you will learn how to identify these people by doing research. If they're an enterprise customer, learn how to schedule, how to find them, how to get an appointment with them, and how to conduct a successful interview, make sense of it all. Right? You'll do that through some workshops with this joker and other people in this room. During the sprint, you'll spend the mornings here typically, and then in the afternoon, we'll say, get out of here and go talk to your customers. And then the next day, you'll come back and tell us what you learned, and we rinse and repeat that. We'll also connect you with some great startup founders. We'll have at least one or two Ask Me Anything kind of talks. This is Carly Roney, Tisch alum. Actually, we didn't have anybody from Tisch, did we? That's surprising. Anyway, who was a Tisch alum and was the founder of a company called The Knot, which grew to develop The Knot, The Nest, The Bump, and I think they now have a different name, but really successful startup. And that's one of the great things about doing this in New York. Not just our alumni, but there's lots of folks who want to be involved and get back and get to meet you folks. And you also work alongside a group of other hardworking startups that are in the same boat as you. You'll get daily coaching from members of our team. This is the rest of the team. So you met me. I've been working, as I mentioned, in startups and venture capital and in Silicon Valley for before that for longer than I can remember. Rebecca, our assistant director, has a long track record of working in innovation and in teaching entrepreneurship. She's been working with me here for 3 years now, and you'll be seeing a lot of the two of us. Sergey and Dee, who bookend that, are associates who work for our venture fund, but spend probably more than half of their time coaching teams as well. So you'll see a lot of them. And then Emily, who helps run our boot camps and our female founders initiatives and does a lot of coaching, will also be part of that. And then Chris, Kylie, and Mir are the 3 founders in residence that I referred to as well. You'll also have be given 24/7 access for the length of the program to the Leslie E Lab or your new startup home. As I mentioned, each team will be offered up to $1,000 for reimbursable expenses. So we don't just cut you a check for $1,000, because that would actually have negative tax consequences to you that you don't want. But you could, within, don't quote me on this, 3 or 6 months, you can submit up to $1,000 for reimbursable expenses related to prototyping, customer development, or customer discovery. So if you needed to, say, travel out to San Francisco for a trade show to speak with your customers, or you need to rent a car to go to New Jersey to talk with someone there, those kinds of things as well, okay? It's not intended for pizza and beer. Again, that would have negative tax consequences for you too, which we don't want. You'll each get 5,000 in credits from Amazon Web Services that you can use for any of their anything in their cloud portfolio. Our partners at Fenwick and West will come and do a workshop on kind of Startup Law 101 and be available for office hours during the program. And then you'll have access to free prototyping tools, and we'll feed you a decent amount during the 2 weeks. And lots of coffee as well. Yes?
So the legal framework invest, are they available after the program as well if you want to ask them questions, or if you're working on something that goes beyond 2 weeks, which is a high cost program?
Yes, I can't promise you that they're going to do anything for free at that point, but they may. It depends on the nature of it. Okay, they're not going to write a contract for you or draft a term sheet or things like that. But one-off legal questions, perhaps, probably, maybe. I'm not sure. It depends on the nature of it. Yep.
Follow-up question: that would they draft documents for us in terms of contracts or any kind of vesting agreements, anything of that sort during the program?
Not for free, no. They're essentially offering kind of an introduction and explanation of what you need to know, right, to avoid the traps that a lot of founders fall into, and then answer some of your questions. Okay, so Summer Launchpad has a whole lot more in terms of legal support, so hold that question. Okay, you'll also be eligible at the end of the program to apply for another $1,500 in follow-on grant funding, also for reimbursable expenses, and then you're eligible automatically for an interview for Summer Launchpad, and invite into our night fellowship, which I can talk about at the end if we have time. And you also, if you are commercializing research, are eligible for the National Science Foundation's I-Corps program, which is a 7-week startup accelerator that comes with a $50,000 grant. Okay, but they're really looking for deep technology stuff, not apps or consumer products. Okay, I can talk more about that if folks have questions. A little more detail on that, as I said, right, the sprint is really focusing on the left side of this process. You will learn a lot about using the business model canvas to help you articulate your hypotheses for your business. You may have multiple hypotheses for parts of it, and if you are serving multiple customers in a multi-sided market, who knows what a multi-sided market is? What's a multi-sided market?
Some examples would be like hiring or building any kind of like marketplace platform where people buy and sell things. You have like two distinct groups.
So like Etsy,
buyer and seller.
right? Etsy, to Etsy, both the buyers, the consumers, and the sellers are really both of their customers. And their business couldn't exist without both sides of it, right? Google search is another good example, right? We have searchers, us, and advertisers, right? The business doesn't really work without both of them. Newspapers are arguably the oldest multi-sided market, or one of the oldest multi-sided markets, right? You need readers, but you also need advertisers for it to work, for their business to work for them, right? The problem, or the challenge, I should say, when you're getting started in the early days of your venture, right, is that actually more than half of your assumptions are wrong. This is actually a photo, Rebecca put this in here. I said that same thing before a sprint a year ago, and the team prepared this slide, which I loved. So it turns out Frank was right. They invalidated the overwhelming, they only didn't invalidate 2 of the boxes in their business model canvas. Right, but it's not just them, and I'm not saying this cavalierly. Actually, we have data that says it's worse than half. Actually, on average, entrepreneurs will invalidate about 60% of their hypotheses. Okay, and at 60%, there's a very good chance that one or more of those being wrong has the capacity to kill your business. Okay, so the goal is about turning those hypotheses into facts, right? And we're going to do this by following the scientific method, which is this little circle right here, right? We're going to observe things from the real world, develop hypotheses, run experiments that we then test and gather insight from that. Okay, those experiments initially are going to be interviews. Okay, but just like you would want to properly structure your hypotheses and your experiments in the way you collect data, you want to provide a little bit of that rigor in the way you conduct interviews and not just go randomly talk to people. Okay, so we'll help you get really specific about who it is you want to talk to and really specific about what are the hypotheses you want to test, and then help you inform or develop the right questions to help you gather and collect the insight that you need. That make sense? That's a really important point. Okay? So during the sprint, right, I think I just said this, right, each day you're going to be challenged to get out of the building and find 5 customers to talk to, right, so that by the end of the 2 weeks you'll have spoken with 50 people. Okay? And you're not necessarily asking them all the same thing, right? You might be testing at the very beginning, who's your target customer, what's their value. Maybe by the end you'll be looking more about, okay, how do I actually acquire these customers, or how do I price my product, or what's my revenue model, and so on. So you're gonna do a deep dive into each aspect of your business model. And then every other day you'll come in here and you'll present to us, and we will give you real-time feedback and radical candor. Okay, meaning we're going to be really direct and to the point to make the best use of your time, and not mince words, and not say, that's a great idea when it's actually a shitty idea. Okay, actually we're not really going to give you feedback on your idea, but we are going to give you feedback on how you're doing in terms of your ability to test your hypotheses. Okay, and you'll also meet with the coaches one-on-one outside of the context of the larger room. So the schedule will look something like this. I'm not going to dive deep into this, but you can see, we spend a little bit more time with you the first couple days, and then you're out of here early enough that you can spend the afternoon getting those interviews done. To the extent possible, you can use evenings for that as well, but there's going to be other things to do in the evenings in terms of getting ready for the next day. We actually have some sprint participants in the room. They can tell you, I'll point them out at the end if they're not too shy, we'll tell you it is a really intense 2 weeks. But we've had people from the sprint say, I learned more in these 2 weeks than I did all of last semester. And that's not a knock on anything that happens in the classroom. It's a different model and style of learning, and it is intentionally intensive really for 2 reasons. One, to make the best use of your time, and also to create a sense of urgency that will help you make the best use of your time and really begin to simulate what a startup is like. Right? So startup time is your most precious resource. So this is the first week. I won't read all this. And the second week looks a lot like the first week, except it's a day longer. And then on the final day, we'll have final team presentations. You'll see, if you're paying attention, you can see we have some external speakers throughout it, and Rebecca and Emily and Sergey and Dee and I are presenting the bulk of the content. But it's not a lot of lectures, it's much more of you actually presenting and us giving feedback. Any questions on the schedule so far? Okay? Nope? Okay? Here's a quote from Alberto, who's a PhD student, and his co-founder Sarah, who's an undergrad, who were in our summer Launchpad last summer, and they're in Ignite this year. I'll give you a second to read that. Very indicative of the experience that most teams, or virtually all teams, have in the program. Okay, so that's the start of sprint. I want to pivot now and talk a little bit about Summer Launchpad. We can do questions about the end. If you have a question now, feel free to, yes?
Is the sprint some sort of prerequisite for the Launchpad?
Yes. We do make exceptions to that, but by and large, right, our real preference, I mean, I'll be fully candid here, is to do Summer Launch, to make the best use of Summer Launchpad. It's not only better to have done the sprint beforehand, it's even better to have done the sprint months beforehand. Okay, and the reason for that is that we've seen, we've been doing this for many years now, the teams that do the sprint have time to let those lessons gel a little bit, but also to do more customer discovery than you could possibly do, and frankly run more experiments than you could possibly do just in those 2 weeks. Okay? That being said, each year we do accept a few teams in the sprint and then give them conditional admission or entry to Summer Launchpad. Right? If you totally screw it up in the sprint, that's not a good precursor or predictor of your performance in Summer Launchpad. Okay, but that being said, we don't really have a lot of teams that really fail Summer Launchpad, the sprint, so to speak. Right, okay, so again, the Summer Launchpad is the 9-week, the big accelerator with the big grant. Right, so we're really looking here for teams that are ready to launch their venture and commit to it full time. Okay, now we've had most of the teams, I would say, I don't know the exact number, most of the teams are actually about to graduate or already graduated. But we've actually had, that company that was acquired, the founder of that is currently a junior at Gallatin, and he was in Summer Launchpad after his freshman year. Okay, so impressive entrepreneur with great business, lots of traction, and ended up getting acquired 6-9 months after participating in Summer Launchpad. He's still a student here, and somehow he's still working at that startup, at the company that acquired him. Okay, you need to be beyond the idea stage, right? Ideally, have some proof of concept or prototype that gives us the comfort that you can actually execute on this business. Okay, so just having an engineer on your team is not necessarily enough, but every team is a little different. And as I mentioned earlier, we're looking for that demonstrated problem solution fit. Yes?
For the teams, normally, do you find that people just come in with a set of people, or that they can have other team members join them as they see fit based on however they develop their idea?
Well, I mean, every company that we would work with, we expect is going to grow over time.
Right.
Do they necessarily add team members during the program? Sometimes, but I don't see a lot of that. Usually they're so heads down on trying to figure out what's my freaking business and how are we going to execute on it, right? In fact, part of the process is figuring out what are the things this business needs to be really good at. So like you guys are co-founders, right? You might be great at engineering, maybe he's great at marketing and customer acquisition, but no one does sales. Okay, so you realize that we're gonna do direct sales, that's gonna be our business model. We better get someone on the team that knows sales. That's part of the process of figuring that out. What is kind of the skill set we need on this team? You may not need it right away, right? But being able to plan for that is an important part of it. We are always, hold that thought. We are always looking though for teams, okay? Teams means at least 2 or more, right? I think I'll say this in a bit, but I'll say it now while it's top of mind, is you don't all have to be from NYU. As long as one of the founders, and I don't mean an intern, a founder must fit the NYU criteria that I laid out, okay? If you have 2 or 1 or 3 other non-NYU founders, that's cool, okay? You're welcome. So yeah, you had a question.
Do you need to be making profit as a requirement to be considered for
No.
the summer?
No, that's very rare. No, in fact, I would say most are pre-revenue. So we don't have any expectation that you're making profit.
With regards to the requirement of being part of the team, does that have to be formalized by having something incorporated with that other person?
So
prior to entry into this?
No, but it is an expectation that during the program you will, bless you, you will incorporate and sort that out. And the sooner you do that, I should be careful as this. While it can be problematic to do it prematurely, it can be even more problematic if you put it off. So there is some sweet spot in there of doing it. And over the program, I'll talk about the legal support in a minute. Was there a question in the back here? Yes?
How long after graduation can you still be part of the
So, let's make it specific. When have you already graduated?
no graduation?
Oh, then you fit the profile. And if you want to apply next year, that would probably be okay too.
Follow-up question. Do you need to have a working full prototype in order to be accepted? for the
Not-
summer launchpad?
That's what we're looking for, but I'll say it depends. Depends on what else, right? How confident we are that you actually have validated your business already, how strong the team is. if you had a commitment from a customer to do a pilot when you built it, like that would, that actually might be better than actually having a work. So it depends, but generally speaking, we're looking for that.
Say we have the platform fully launched and there's people using it, would we still have to do the 2-week sprint in order to be?
It depends.
Okay.
It depends. Because, you know, sometimes, and we've seen this a lot, actually, where you have a team that is out, they built the product and they're selling, but they have no idea who they're selling to or why people are buying. That sounds crazy, but we see that a fair amount. I mean, not they have no idea, but I mean, they really don't have a, like, why is this segment of the market buying it? Or who is this segment? Right? Knowing how many orders you've taken is not a predictor of future orders. Yeah.
And do you need everyone at either the sprint or the Launchpad? All the founders, I'm sorry?
We need at least 2 people to be committed full time. I think I'm trying to answer some of your other questions. Maybe hold on for a second and we'll go through that. So this program actually dates back to 2013. It's changed a little bit over the years. You've probably seen some of these companies around. I don't know if you saw them in the news today. Brooklyn just raised another $50 million. Probably if you take the subway, you know who Brooklyn is. I think they own the subway these days. And you probably have heard of some of these others, and others I'm sure you will soon. But collectively between them, they've raised over $500,000 in non-dilutive grants. Actually, I have to update that now. We can say that add another 50 to that, thanks to Brooklyn. And they are generating over $100 million in revenue between them. And that's not all Brooklyn. Okay, no good chunk of it is. Actually, we have to update that number as well. So lots of success. It's been really kind of a launch pad, pardon the pun, for a lot of NYU teams. And I don't know how many schools that represents within the university, but it's a lot. You know, some other things I said that, you know, a lot of them have raised venture funding. They have participated in other startup accelerators. We've actually had a bunch that have gone into Techstars. As I mentioned, we have a bunch that have gotten grants and or done crowdfunding from like Kickstarter. Not to dwell on Brooklyn, but that's actually how they got started. And lots of other awards amongst them. And while this is all great, they also love the program. Actually, 9.8, so we've been surveying just the last couple of years, and they also similarly love their summer Launchpad experience. A little bit more detail, right? Again, I already told you this. This is what we're focusing on for the purpose of the Summer Launchpad Accelerator. Over the program, at the very beginning of the program, in fact, even before the program starts, we're going to ask you to submit what your milestones are for the summer, and then we'll meet with you and help you say, okay, do we think these are right or wrong, and help you adjust. So we want you to have concrete goals that you're going to achieve over the course of the summer as well as by the end. And then work with you to help you validate all the elements of your business model. You'll learn how to run experiments, how to test every dimension of your business model, and ultimately refine whatever your product or initial service offering is. And you'll do that similarly to the sprint by presenting, in this case, weekly to the coaches. You know, every week you'll tell us, you know, this is what we thought going in, this is what we did, these are the experiments we run, who we spoke to, this is what we learned, and these are the implications going forward. Rinse and repeat that. Get a lot of feedback and a lot of support to help you scale your venture. We will have workshops, 1 or 2 a week on topics like these and more. I won't bother reading those. That will be just for the Summer Launchpad cohort. Some of them by us, others by leaders from the startup community. We'll have 5 or 6 AMAs, Ask Me Anythings, with successful startup founders from companies like this that you see here, amongst others. You'll learn how to run experiments. Not everything happens in the park, but for the more consumer-facing ones, a lot do. This was a team that wanted to test demand for their product, which was actually a fresh version of spirulina. that they were growing in hydroponic tanks. And they learned a lot from talking, because just, again, people buying it is one thing. People actually tasting it, using it is another thing. You'll get a lot of one-on-one mentorship. As I mentioned, we'll do a mentor matchup at the beginning of the summer and pair you up based on your preferences and the mentor's preferences. This was who our mentors were last summer. And it won't be the exact same group this year, but it'll be a diverse array. Many who are alumni, not all of them. You can see those ones in purple, or violet, I should say. And you'll also work with investors from funds like this, as well as some angel investors that will serve as your mock board of directors over the course of the summer. God bless you. Right? You each will get $10,000. We'll give it to you in 2 or 3 slugs over the course of the summer to ensure that you're living up to your end of the bargain. We don't want to give someone $10,000 and then have them disappear. You'd be surprised. We've seen everything. We've been doing this for 7 years. I think I've seen just about everything.
Is that also reimbursable?
No, that's so you will, okay, good question. In order to receive the grant, you must incorporate. So the grant will go to your company. Okay, and that does have tax consequences, but we'll explain that. Okay, this is where we kind of rip off the training wheels, right? But you'll work with, as I'll tell you in a second, with McCarter and English, who will help you do that, get it right, set up your ownership structure between the founders and all that stuff. Okay, and then we'll actually start that process before the program actually begins. So that hopefully before the month of May is out, not May, before the month of June is out, right, you will already be incorporated and we can make the first tranche or deliver the first tranche of that grant. Okay, the slower you are in doing the paperwork, the slower the money is gonna come. Okay, and we can't do anything about that until your company is incorporated, your bank account is established, and whatever other paperwork there is, okay? You'll have about $15,000 in perks. You have call it, I think $3,500 worth of pro bono legal counsel work for incorporation, setting up your founder agreements, that kind of stuff, with McCarter and English, another excellent startup law firm that we work with. First Republic Bank will get you banked online. They're really good and very startup friendly bank. You'll get, as I mentioned, an additional 10,000 credits from AWS, discounts on HubSpot, and also access to some other perks, including office hours with some other accelerators that will come in over the course of the summer. Right, so you don't have to, but if you're interested in doing Techstars or ERA or something like that, not necessarily right away, but later on, you can have that relationship before you leave. You'll also have the opportunity to participate in a demo day at the Entrepreneurs Festival, which is actually being moved to the fall. Yes?
So the previous slide you showed, so regarding the First Republic Bank,
Yes.
you had a couple of asterisks on the very first slide, and I'm wondering
The
if
very
we need
first slide.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if there's anything that we need to.
Which was the very first slide of the presentation?
Yeah.
This one?
You have like 2 plus signs.
Yeah, 2 plus signs, and so I wasn't sure.
Oh, that meant plus other things.
Oh.
So it's like the software discounts, discount at WeWork, that kind of stuff.
Okay, got it.
God, you are paying attention. Diligence. Love this attention to detail. All right. Yes.
So the question about the legal documents that we might need drafted, will the company
McCarter and English.
McCarter and English, will they help us with that?
Yes, they will provide form documents and advise you on how to complete them and file them with the state of Delaware, which is what we always recommend, where startups file. Doesn't mean you have to move to Delaware, it's just where your legal entity is based. Okay? You're welcome. Beyond Summer Launchpad, so I already mentioned the demo day. We also have a friends and family demo day. where we invite all of our mentors and some angel investors and other venture funds. That is usually a subset of the group, as well as some teams from the prior year. The expectation is not that you walk out with your round closed that night. It's just a way to start to begin to expand your network with the rest of the venture community. If you raise money, more power to you. Just trying to manage expectations. We also have had teams participate in our Ignite beta cohort. In fact, not all of them, but the majority of them, which just means that on a every other week basis, I believe, those teams will meet here with Sergey. Okay, it's a way to kind of keep the band together, help provide the ongoing peer support, encouragement, hold you accountable, occasionally bring in some guest speakers, sometimes give you some food. So we know you'll still be poor entrepreneurs. We also, as I think you probably already figured out, some of our founders and residents have come from these cohorts in the past. And actually we let the founders and residents work out of this, even though they've graduated, they continue to work out of the space at no charge. We also have something in Brooklyn at the new 370 J Street building called the Ignite Lab, where we have space for about 3 or 4 other teams who can work there at very low cost. And then also the venture fund is available to you as well. Yes?
All of these are invite basis or?
Yes, yes. Those are all invite, but you're all eligible for them post the summer Launchpad. So the schedule really changes week to week. The first week is very immersive and intensive. Okay, pretty much assume you're going to be here with us, with your mentors, with your coaches, doing the mentor matchup the majority of the first week. And then on ongoing weeks, this is a typical weekly schedule, okay? Maybe we'll have a workshop on Tuesday, 1 or 2 workshops, and then we'll split the teams up into subgroups of 5s, and then you will each 5 will give their weekly presentation on Tuesday. They'll get radical candor, as I called it earlier, from our team. We'll provide you lunch in the middle, and then the next morning we'll do a breakfast AMA. Right? Ask Me Anything with a startup founder, another workshop, and then the other 5 teams. Right? Everyone is expected to be here for every workshop and every AMA. Okay? The rest of the time, you're on your own. You're all welcome to come for the lunch on Wednesdays. Okay? But if you were in teams 1 through 5, or on Tuesday, you don't have, after the workshops in the morning, you can split down. Okay? But the expectation is you're not going to the beach, you're working on your startup. That being said, we're not going to micromanage your time, okay? You guys are grown-ups, you're entrepreneurs, and you're working on your own time. But however, if we're not seeing progress from week to week, okay, then you're not going to stay in the program, or you're not going to get all the money, to be blunt, okay? Every 3rd week, on Thursdays, we'll have our board meetings with your investors, okay? And so that's something we can talk. You'll learn more about once you're in the program. And then after the board meetings, we'll have a happy hour that night somewhere. Okay, blow off steam, been a long week. And then other than that, the rest of the time, Mondays, Fridays, the other time that you're not obligated to be here, the expectation is you're out talking to customers, you're running experiments, you're building your prototypes, whatever is the right thing for your business. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay. So I'm not going to read this, but this is kind of each week has a slight different emphasis. And so you'll kind of, week 1 is kind of I won't say a rehash, but a re-emphasis on some of the things that we really focused on in the sprint. And then we go into the rest of it in much greater detail. Yep, to close it, you have to hold the button down until it closes. Can someone close that?
Someone's got
Yeah, just hold the button. Thank you. Okay, and then at the end we'll have a final lessons learned presentation. Okay, here's another satisfied customer. You guys probably heard about sea straws. They're all over campus. Antonio is a big fan of the program. He's taking advantage of pretty much almost every program we offer here. And then some final things, okay? So I think I've said all this, but this is a kind of a good recap, right? And I think it was to this young lady's question, right? We are expecting the vast majority of you who have participated in this, if you want to apply to Summer Launchpad, you should have participated in the sprint before. You can apply to both, okay? To apply to the sprint, we strongly encourage that you do some one-on-one coaching and you participate in one of our startup boot camps, which we run every month. I don't know the exact dates of the next one, but they're outlined on our website. It's a 2-day, usually either Friday to Friday or Wednesday and Wednesday, half day, where you get a taste of what you're going to learn in the sprint. It's a great way for you to really do some preliminary testing. Does my idea hold water? Is there a potential market for this? And frankly, do I want to do all this? Do I want to do all this customer discovery? Do I want to talk to all these people? Am I comfortable with the ambiguity that is inherent to being a startup founder? Okay? In both cases, right, we're looking for teams that want to build a scalable startup. What does that mean? It means not a consulting business, not a single retail store, or not something that's going to be a lifestyle business. Doesn't mean you have to raise venture capital. You're going to meet Kylie in a few minutes. She's never going to raise venture capital because she's running a nonprofit, but she is working her tail off to build a scalable startup, and I'm confident she will. Okay? We're looking for teams that are looking to learn and be mentored, not just to build stuff or to get the money. Okay? We're looking for teams that want customer input, that crave customer input. You might not crave it yet. This is another good reason to think of the boot camp as a test.
6 o'clock.
Thank you. As I mentioned, at least one NYU founder. We have a preference. Right? The money for the sprint actually comes from the National Science Foundation. The university has a grant specifically to fund and advance women and other underrepresented founders in STEM fields. Everyone know what STEM is? Science, technology, engineering, and math. Okay, that's a requirement for the sprint, something we prefer for Summer Launchpad. And then that you're aligned with the program goals that I've been laying out for the last hour. You're community-minded, as I think Kylie will be able to tell you. You spend a lot of time with these people, with one another, and you don't have to all be best friends, but the sum can be greater than the parts if you all help each other, and we actually do tally that and we give out prizes through the summer for that. And then we are also looking for people who are all in. Okay, if you're going to, well, no one's going to Italy these days, but if you're traveling for 2 weeks in the middle of summer, Summer Launchpad's not for you. If you're going to miss 3 days of the sprint's not for you. Okay, we're looking for people who are fully committed and fully available for every dimension of the program. Okay? And particularly for Summer Launchpad, we really want people who are committed to launching their venture. Okay, it's not just an academic exercise. So you might want to take a picture of this just in case you don't get the slides for a few days. Okay, there's a teammate hunt on March 12th. Right, so if you're looking to add folks to your team, if you think you already know what some of the skills that you need on your startup are, it's a great way to meet people. You can also come to the teammate hunt, even if you just have skills but you don't have an idea or a startup. Okay, it works both ways. Works better if we have both of those. Okay, so here's boot camp. The boot camp application is due March 13th, so that's 10 days from now. Okay, accelerator applications will open, I believe that is. No, they're due, sorry, by March 25th. I think they're gonna open this week. You will get an email. If you signed up for this, you will get an email when it's open. It's not something you can do in 10 minutes, but it shouldn't take you days or hours either. okay? And the more thought, we read them very carefully. Actually, I should say, we get about 80 to 100 applications for these programs, so it is very competitive. Okay, so read the questions carefully. We actually put a lot of thought into the questions, and I'd encourage you to read the questions, and rather than just copy and pasting something from somewhere else, make sure you're answering the question, okay? It's pretty obvious when you're not. And then we will interview teams for both programs the first 2 weeks in April rather. And then the sprint will have a quick orientation on the afternoon of May 1. If you can't all be there, at least one team member must be there. Okay, we understand that's getting near finals time. For Summer Launchpad, same day, later that day. Okay, the McCarter and English will be, that's one of the reasons why this one's longer. The McCarter and English is here, and they're going to tell you really important things about getting the ball rolling on incorporation. Okay, there'll be pre-coaching for both, the dates you can see here, and then you know the dates the programs start. Okay, so I'm just going to click this and then invite up. I'll put that back up in a second. If you haven't done a boot camp already, you really should sign up and meet with one of our coaches. Okay, it's right on the homepage of our website at entrepreneur.nyu.edu. The teammate hunt is on the 12th, right here at the Leslie E Lab. You do need to RSVP for that, so please do that. Whoops, wrong direction. And then applications will be open I think this week, because that was the slide was from last week. And so with that, I'd like to introduce Kylie. Kylie is a third year grad student at Wagner. She is the co-founder of Govern for America that I'll let her tell you about in a second. Kylie has, I think, participated in every friggin' program we offer here at the Leslie E Lab. And just quick story, then I'll let her introduce herself, and then you can ask both of us questions. Is what time of year did you first approach us when you knew you wanted to do Summer Launchpad? Around this, maybe February?
Yeah, it was a little earlier than this.
And she met with one of our coaches and said, I really want to do this, And so she did a boot camp. I remember from boot camp, performed really well in the boot camp, learned a lot, made a little progress, and then applied to both programs. Performed really well in the sprint and did Summer Launchpad and has just had a lot of really great success from there that I'll let her talk about. So go ahead, you want to share it? You want to stay?
I'll just stand. So hi, my name is Kylie, co-founder of Govern for America. So Govern for America is building the next generation of public sector leaders. We are doing that through our 2-year fellowship. So when you hear Govern for America, you may think of a better known Teach for America, and that is on purpose. So we are Teach for America for Government. So we work primarily with state governments. So we recruit, train, and place graduating college seniors and master's students, and we place them into high-impact state government jobs. So far, we have contracted with 8 government partners, and so that's 7 states and 1 county, to place 45 people. So last year we placed 15 people. We're doubling this year to place 30. As Frank mentioned, we are a nonprofit, so in some ways different than I'm sure what many of you will be founding, but in a lot of ways, and one of the reasons why we're so excited to have gone through all of the NYU Leslie E Lab programming is because we have really learned to run our nonprofit like a for-profit. So we charge all of our state partners to work with us so that we don't rely just on philanthropy and the goodness of people's hearts, because believe it or not, good governance is not a very sexy thing to fund. It's probably surprising, but it is true. Yeah, I'll just talk a little bit about.
You okay?
Yeah. I'll just talk a little bit about some of the programming we did and the advantage that we found with both of the programs. So, like Frank said, we've done literally everything. We've done the coaching, one-on-one. We did some of the startup school stuff. One thing that I highly recommend, since I assume everyone here are students of some type, we did a really good job of using all of our classes as windows into what GFA could be doing better. So basically,
GFA's going
oh yeah, sorry. So everybody at Wagner who has ever taken a class with me has heard of GFA from me because I talk about it so much, because I use it as a case study for everything that we do. So that's not like related to here necessarily, although I know that they have like lists of classes you can take, but I highly recommend doing that. It has like made me get a lot of connections to professors that otherwise might not have, but also it's just a very useful practice. Summer Sprint was amazing. We were maybe a little bit skeptical. We were like, we already know what our product is going to be, and like, yeah, she was, my co-founder. We already know what our product is going to be. We came up with this idea several months ago. We've been working on it. We've talked to at least like 20 people who said it's a good idea. And then we did the summer sprint and we were like, wow, there's so much that we didn't know. So for example, one of the things you do in summer sprint is really get out of the building and talk to people, interview people. One lesson learned, which in retrospect is so stupid that we didn't like kind of know this beforehand, but we couldn't have known unless we just got out and talked to people, was, and I'm sorry if you've heard me talk before, I always tell this story, but we were like, they asked us, well, what like percentage of college students would you say would be interested in applying to work for state government? They were like, both of us wanted to work for state government, so we were like, probably like 50%. Yeah, some of you are laughing. Yeah, that's like an absurd percentage. And so they were like, okay, well, like, here, like, you know, go out into the community, talk to people, target people. So we went into the library and we found people to talk to. And we learned that very few people wanted to work in state government, but that led us down the rabbit hole of why don't you want to work in state government, which led us to how could we be positioning what we are doing to better attract top talent. So the summer sprint was super helpful. We have at this point now talked to literally thousands of young people. People are applying to programs like ours, but also to government, people who we work with in the government, which was another huge learning for us in the sprint. They would ask us, who is your customer? And we would say, we think it's state government. And they were like, state government is not a person. And who is the actual person in there? So there were just so many assumptions that we had made before starting Summer Sprint especially, that after having been forced to talk to tons and tons of people, we realized weren't right. And it really helped us not only pivot the way that we were pitching what our product was, but also really some fundamental things about what our product was offering. And then the accelerator was also just an incredible experience. All the other teams were amazing. Everybody supported each other. We would do kind of co-coaching informally often, and formally you get to know each other really well because you're here for many, many hours. And the programming was super helpful, even for us as a nonprofit, where we were kind of like, ooh, how much of it's actually going to be that helpful for talking about raising venture money? Is that going to be applicable to us? But of course it was, because we still need to pitch to philanthropy and foundations and people who are going to give us money, and to states. So really every piece was applicable to us, and the community has been really helpful for us going forward. It has been something that we've been able to lean on since we graduated from Summer Accelerator. So I will stop there and see what questions you will have.
Question? No?
How much was the lab part of you coming up with the right questions to go out and ask them? Like, can you tell us about that
Yes.
process a little bit?
Definitely, yes. Hypothesis, is that yeah. So the questions for sure, yes, but also the framing of hypotheses was something that we had a lot of work to do on, and that all the teams had a lot of work to do on, and that the coaches really pushed us to define really, really clearly, because a vague hypothesis isn't helpful, but a really specific hypothesis that you can test by talking to people or doing market research was really helpful. So yes, and I really don't think we would have gotten at the right things to test had we not had a lot of critical and very helpful feedback.
Critical and
Yeah, helpful. It was like Shark Tank sometimes.
Other questions for either of us?
Are a lot of the, in your opinion, in your experience, are a lot of the, like, startups more nonprofit or for-profit?
There was one other in ours that was a nonprofit, and all the other teams were for-profit. But I think there was there a
There
B
were two.
Corp or?
Did one vote in it?
I think they did,
We had
yeah.
at least, I'd say at least, in addition to the two nonprofits, I'd say there were 2 or 3 others that were, I'd call social impact.
Yeah, okay.
Ventures who were for-profit.
Yeah.
Like Warby Parker is a for-profit social venture, right? Tom's, others, Ben and Jerry's, you know, I mean,
Right.
you can be both, right? And
100%.
something I probably said to Kylie a couple years ago, right? Not-for-profit doesn't mean not-for-revenue.
Yeah.
Right, no, I understand that.
Not everybody does.
Yeah,
That is
no,
true.
it was scary. There was like, oh my goodness.
Yeah. Another fun fact that people don't know about nonprofits is that you can actually pay yourself as an employee. My mom, when I was like, we're starting a nonprofit, was like, oh my God, how are you going to survive?
So, no.
You can pay yourself.
So, question for either of you. So I know there is a fixed program that the Sprint and the Launchpad follows, but you probably have companies who are definitely at different stages in terms of their life. So how much do you stick to a program, and how flexible would we have?
It's not a class in that regard.
Okay.
Okay, I mean, the workshops are set, but the things that each team are presenting and the feedback they're getting is unique to them.
Right.
And different teams are gonna be at different, starting points.
Right.
And accelerate at different paces.